What's up everyone, and welcome back to Reload Reacts. My name is Trey, and today we are going to look through r/EntitledParents, the subreddit for those wonderful stories of mums or dads thinking that because they have kids, they are entitled to anything and everything. This first post is by What the Hell 431. I witnessed EM getting destroyed. I saw this today and can't stop laughing. I was travelling in my city metro. It wasn't that much crowded at that time, but all the seats were still occupied. Still, you could freely stand without being humped by a stranger. There was a kid sitting in the reverse seats, the ones for people with handicaps, pregnant women, and old people, definitely not for a mum of 2 years. He was probably 14 or 15, I don't know. He is the hero of the story here. Then, at one stop, our EM comes in. She has this cute little child who was trying to keep up with his mum's pace. EM instantly sees our hero sitting at the reserve seat and just stares at him. I guess this was her way to make people automatically give away their seats or something? The kid didn't move though. This probably irked EM a lot, I guess, because she moved towards the kid with heavy steps. She comes near him, stop, and again does the stare. The kid doesn't budge. Then she starts screaming. If she didn't have the whole compartment's attention earlier, she had it now. She starts berating the kid for sitting in a reserved seat and not giving it for someone more deserving, like a mother, like herself with a young kid. I don't know what her logic was. The seats aren't reserved for them anyways. She just kept shouting and screaming and tries to get other opinions on it, and for a while people were on her side. Then the kid, out of nowhere, rolls right side of his jeans up and detaches the artificial leg and keeps it in front of EM. The look on her face was priceless. It looked like she was mortified and embarrassed at the same time. She just backed away silently, and just got off for the next stop. I don't even think that was her stop. This next post is by top_gorilla17. Let them eat cake. Long ago, way back in the before time, I worked for one of those bulk warehouse club stores. My trade was simple. I was a wrangler of the Silver Buffalo, and dutifully retrieved the old ghetto strollers I did. The job in and of itself wasn't the worst I'd ever had. I got plenty of exercise, got to be outside, and generally didn't have to interact with the members. Calling them customers was taboo, for the most part. The thing about this job is that the company I worked for had a reputation for being cheap. Thus, more oftenly than not, I was on my own out in the parking lot. Big whoop, you might say. You gathered carts? You should see how hard my job is. Yeah, well, shut up. This is my story, butt munch. I digress. The reason that being alone sucked is that this store didn't just have one kind of cart. Hell, they didn't even make it just two kinds of carts. You had your classic garden variety cart, the kiddie cart with the plastic facade to make it resemble a car, the electric scooters which weren't supposed to leave the store but did so with alarming frequency, and finally the bulky, hard to control flatbeds. On top of that, whenever someone needed help loading their haul into their minivans, I was the guy they called. You know, because the greeters, cashiers, and managers were all busy. As you might expect, one man cannot be in multiple places at once, and as a result, on some of our busier days it became incredibly difficult to keep enough cards in the vestibule. Our story begins on one of those days. So there I was, chugging along like a good worker drone, struggling to keep up with the sheer amount of volume coming in to buy cheap goods. Sure enough, I get a call on the radio. Manager. OP, we need you to help some members load their purchases. I'd love to, but I'm barely able to keep it out here as it is. Just do it, OP. You can afford to stop gathering carts for 2 minutes. Ron Howard. He couldn't. I didn't want to push my luck, so I complied. After spending 20 minutes loading people's purchases because when one person needs it, suddenly they all need it, I came back to find my vestibule a near ghost town, save for a single line of carts that was half gone and the Karen. I won't waste time describing this specimen. She was the prototype, you know what she looked like. There she stood, menacing, tapping her foot with such speed that could make any metal drummer green with envy. You could collect the contempt in her gaze in a jar. Karen. Where are the big flat ones? I blanked for a moment. I'm sorry? Ugh. Mexicans. For the record, I'm very much white. Where are the flat ones? Oh, you mean the flatbeds? I'm sorry. I was just helping some other members load their merchandise and haven't had a chance to. Oh my god, I don't care about your excuses. You have one job and a trained monkey could do it. I just want this lady out of my face so I don't fight it. Me. Sorry ma'am, I'll grab this one from the parking lot for you. You'd better. So I go back out to the lot and find a whole line of flatbeds sticking out of a corridor blocking several parking spaces. I push them all into the vestibule where she waits, huffing about how I'm wasting her valuable time. I separate one from the rest and bring it to her. I'm terribly sorry about the wait, ma'am. She leers at me with utter malice. Unbelievable. And with that, she dismisses herself into the store, where she will be someone else's problem. I shake my head and return to doing what I'm paid to do. About 15 minutes later, I'm returning a line of carts when I see her push her flatbed to her Miata and jawing about stupid people, most certainly referring to me on her cell phone. You know what she had bought? What she had insisted on having a flatbed for? A cake. This wasn't even like a big cake. It was one of those little circular numbers. Anyways, I witness as she continues to yammer on about how I nearly ruined, I tell you, her precious baby's birthday party, when the most glorious thing happened. Still clutching her phone with those scoop claws of hers, she attempts to pick up the cake with one hand. The plastic topper pops off and she spills the cake all over her undoubtedly expensive designer outfit. Seething with white-hot rage, she locks eyes with me. Karen. You! Get me another cake! Now! Terribly sorry, ma'am. I've got one job and these carts won't gather themselves. I walked away, S-eating grin, plastered on my face as her shrieks faded into the distance behind me. I've had my share of nasty customer interactions before, but this one really took the cake. This next post is by Colleen-T. EM brings along her kid to work unannounced. Background. My company sets up a booth at a carnival and we engage several part-timers to assist at the carnival. The part-timers are required to go around the carnival ground to distribute flyers, share information and direct visitors to our booth. The story. On the day of the carnival after setting up, I met with the part-timers to prepare them for the day. Out of all the part-timers, only EM was late. She mentioned she would be 15 minutes late, but it was closer to an hour. As we couldn't wait, I briefed the others and deployed them for the day. When EM arrived, she had her kid in tow, 5 to 6 years old. Due to job nature, we can't have her lugging her kid while working. EM knew this. EM, my husband couldn't handle my kid, so I had to bring her along. Can't have you working with your kid. It's not my problem. If you don't like it, get someone to watch over him. My colleague C, who was watching this unfold, offered to watch over a kid. He was only required to help out during the start and end of the carnival, so was entirely free during the event. I thought, alright, since he is free. C, I can watch over her, get her some food, watch some shows, play some games, but you'll need to pay me. Whatever, but I'm not paying you for your time, only for blank. Sure. I was flabbergasted. C told me not to worry. He had a plan. Once EM started working, C brought EM's kid systematically through every single booth throughout the entire carnival. It was the kid's dream come true, and I believe her best day ever. Whatever she wanted to eat, C bought. She saw a lot of the shows and won many prizes. Since C had an all-staff pass, he didn't need to pay for the shows, only for the kid. At the end of the carnival, when we were clocking the hours worked, EM had the nerve to insist to be paid full, even though she was late for almost 1 hour. She said that because of various reasons, she would have been early. She was ranting and I didn't really pay attention as I was tired and I don't decide on the pay, but it was about how I will never understand as I don't have kids and how she deserves it because she was a mother. My manager nearby winked at me and took over. He said he was very pleased with the day's sales and how we are very supportive of her and we should give kids the best. He told not to worry about the hours she worked and EM will be paid in full. After hearing this, not even a single thanks from EM. She declared in a loud voice, "At least someone understands." She had this condescending and victorious look on her face. Thankfully, it didn't last long. The sucker punch for EM was that EM's kid spent roughly $100, and with EM's pay at $15 an hour for 8 hours, equals $120, she made a whooping $20 for the whole day. C made it a point to keep track of the expenses, receipts, tickets, stubs, etc., and took tons of photos. Of course, EM threw a fit, but with the amount of evidence and her daughter vouching for all the fun she had, EM had no case except to yell, "I'm not paying for this!" grabbed her daughter and stormed off. We look forward on payday when we issue her a check of $20 after subtracting the amount her daughter spent. Regarding pay deductions, it's not illegal because EM is technically not an employee. Her choice, not ours. There does seem to be an update here, but I might save that for a future video, so if you guys want to hear that, make sure you drop a like and let me know in the comments what you want to see more of next. This next post is by Jalecki2020. Neighbour kept parking on my property, so I had him towed. Hello everyone. First thing is that this issue just happened this week, and I am so mad that I am shaking as I type this. I am going to apologize up front if I ramble, but I honestly can't believe this actually happened. I've tried to condense this week's activity into a single story, but sadly it turned out to be super long. Sorry in advance, I think I have to put TLDR. Backstory. I'm a single mother of 2 teenage boys and I live in a nice quiet neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Every house on this street has a garage and I'm the only one that has a single car and parks in my garage. Almost every house on this street is a family home with at least 3 cars, but most have more. Some will park in their driveway and some will park on the street. It's never been a problem since everyone is considerate on how they park and no one has ever had an issue with getting in and out of the street. In addition, I tend to keep myself busy. I'm not antisocial and I wave and say hello to my neighbours when I come and go from my home, but usually when I get home, I stay home. So I say all of this to give you an idea that I'm a homebody and my neighbours pretty much knew that when I get home, I stay home. About 6 months ago, the house to my right was sold to a larger family that consisted of a dad, mum and 3 teenagers. The day they started moving in, I made a point to go over to the edge of the property to wave and greet them in order to welcome them to the neighbourhood. They were friendly and I was happy to have such nice people to move in next door. Also note, this family used their garage for storage and thus parked their 4 cars in their driveway. I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. Now that you have a little information, on to the story. Me is me, ND is entitled Neighbour Dad, NS is entitled Neighbour Son, and NM is entitled Neighbour Mum, and NP is the poor nice police officer. Today is Monday afternoon and this story began last Tuesday. Around 6 PM on Tuesday I received a knock on the door and it was ND. Following is our conversation. ND: Good evening, how are you? Me, talking through the screen door. We're okay. I'm sorry, I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today, so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you and how can I help? I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We're okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you saw the new truck we bought him. Yes, I did. It's a pretty big truck. Does he like it? Yes, he does. It's what he wanted, so we got it for him. It is very big, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Let's take a brief pause here and understand that when I say this truck is very big, it is very big. It is an F350. I personally think it's too much of a vehicle for a kid learning to drive, but it's not my money, so to each their own. Me: I don't understand. We have been having complaints from some of the other neighbours that his truck is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through. We're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street. Yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get it around it myself, but I'm sure he will get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me, I haven't complained. Oh, I know you haven't complained, which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park since you don't use it. Me, very stunned at this. I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception, and your son's truck is so big it will take up most of my driveway, and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it is on my property. Well, we will make sure that he parks so that it will allow you to come and go without any issues. That isn't really possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks halfway on my lawn, and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you are concerned about his truck getting damaged, then why don't you let him park in your driveway and then one of your smaller cars can park in the street? We've already discussed that, and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway, and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property, and I don't need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property. ND very upset at this point. You are not being very neighbourly. I thought you were a nice woman. You don't use your driveway, and this would benefit the whole neighbourhood. Me losing my temper at this point. I told you no, and I do use my driveway every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try and navigate the road with that truck in the way, it is public parking, and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and need to get back to him. Have a good day. With that, I closed the door and then looked out of the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative, and I was told he probably had a run of the mill virus and to keep him home and do self-care. I was told to bring him in if he got worse, but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my co-workers the story of my neighbour's request, and they were shocked. I had one co-worker suggest that I send an email to my HOA to explain what happened just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch and sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbour made a request to park on my property, and when I declined he got mad at me, and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So Friday comes and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him and he had begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I had been doing self-care with him since Tuesday and he didn't appear to be getting any better. Around 7 PM I decided to take him back to minor emergency and loaded him up in the car. I opened my garage door and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big F350 sitting in my driveway blocking me. I cannot describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now, before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time, and unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen, and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbour's house and bang on the door. NM answers the door and this is the conversation. NM irritated and kind of angry. Can I help you? You're interrupting our dinner. Me. Your son is parked in the driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency and that truck is blocking me in. It's at that time that ND walks up behind NM and proceeds to talk. He isn't blocking you in, you can get around him. No, I can't. You need to move that truck or I'm going to call the police and a tow truck. I need to get my son in to see a doctor. NM turning to call for his son and then turning back to me. He's not blocking you, but I will have him move it. It doesn't matter whether you believe he is blocking me in or not. He is not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed to park in my driveway, and if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again, I'm not going to bother to knock on your door, I'm going to have it towed. It was at this time I saw the son arrive with his keys in his hands, and I turned to leave and head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word every woman has heard at least once in her life. I ignored him and headed to my car and watched as he got in and after some effort was finally able to back out of my driveway and parked his car in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to minor emergency where, as we waited for several hours to be seen, I shot off another email to my HOA about what had just happened. I want to advise, the HOA had already responded the day before that they received my email, made a note of it, and advised my property was my own and I could give access or deny access to it as I wish. It was this email string that I responded to while waiting for my kid to be seen. Again, all tests administered to my son came back negative and I was told it was a run-of-the-mill virus and he would be fine. The virus just had to run its course. I took him home and called it a day. Saturday evening, my oldest started complaining of a sore throat and I was starting to feel pretty poorly myself. My youngest appeared to be getting better, so I figured that whatever he had that we were getting, so we stayed in all day Saturday and Sunday. Sunday evening at about 5:30 my oldest son spiked a fever and while it came down a little it didn't come down enough, so I loaded him in the car and off to minor emergency he went. The only one I could find that was open on Sunday at this time was on the other side of town, so I had to drive 20 minutes just to get there and we ended up waiting for 3 hours just to get in the door and then another 45 minutes till we saw the doctor. After a few more hours and all of his tests came back negative, the doctor did state that she could hear some wheezing in his lungs and so she prescribed an inhaler for him to help him, but basically told me the same thing, that he is a run-of-the-mill virus and to let it run its course. I even had to drive further to the only 24-hour pharmacy available to pick up the inhaler and we did not get back to the house until almost midnight. Let me set the scene for you. My son is half asleep in the passenger seat and complaining that he just wants to go home and I am exhausted and feeling drained and having coughing fits myself. I'm just looking forward to going to bed when I rounded the corner and saw that truck sitting in my driveway. I couldn't even pull in because he was blocking me and I also noticed that he was parked partially on my lawn. I was so mad I could hardly see straight. I googled and found a 24-hour tow truck service and explained that I had an unauthorized vehicle on my property that I needed towing. The woman said it would be about 30 minutes before they could get a truck there, and I said that was fine. In the meantime, I walked my kid to the house and put him to bed and then quickly went outside and took a picture from the street to show how much of the driveway he was taking and that he was also parked on my lawn. I couldn't understand why they would park in my driveway again after I told them no, and the only thing I could come up with was that since there had been no activity in my house for hours that my neighbors probably assumed I was in for the night and wouldn't notice my truck in the driveway. This is pure speculation, but it's normal for me to be in for the night, especially after 6 PM. I don't know if they missed me leaving or just saw me leave, but figured I was home, but it doesn't really matter because I told them they couldn't park on my property. It was about 12:30 AM when the tow truck arrived and I half expected my neighbors to come running, but there wasn't any activity from them and the driver left with the truck without incident. I went in, shot off another email to my HOA along with pictures and an explanation that I had towed the vehicle and then went to bed. At 6 AM this morning, I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, hit the video record button. Before I opened the door, I looked through the peephole and saw ND and his son at my door. I opened the door and the following is the conversation. ND very angry and yelling, "Where is the truck?" As calmly as I could state while coughing, "It was towed. You can call such and such company to get arrangements to get it back. You didn't have the right to tow it, you're going to pay to get it back. I had every right to tow an unauthorized vehicle on my property. I told you not to park on my property and you did it anyway. It blocked me from getting in my driveway last night. I told you I was going to have it towed after the last time you parked without my permission, and I won't be paying anything to get it back. You stole my truck, you F&B, and I'm calling the police. I'm going to sue you. Go ahead. In the meantime, I'm sick and I'm going back to bed." I closed the door and stood there for a moment. I looked out of the peephole and they were still there. ND started banging and was also ringing my doorbell non-stop. He knocked and rang my doorbell for another 4 minutes before he gave up. I am still recording all of this and didn't turn off the video until he was gone. I turned and saw my kids standing there. The noise had gotten them up and I just advised that if they were still feeling ill to go back to bed because that's where I was going. Now I will honestly say that I didn't think he would call the police, but he did. It was about half an hour. I wasn't really looking at the clock, then I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and looked through the peephole and a police officer was there. I opened the door and had the following conversation. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbour. He's stating that you stole his son's truck by having it towed from the street. We need to talk to you about this issue." "Good morning, officer. My neighbour is only telling you half the story. I had his truck towed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway and I've already told him twice that him and his family can't park on my property. This issue started last week and I have emails to my HOA, pictures of his truck parked in my driveway this morning, and a video of my neighbour's visit this morning where he called me names and told me he was going to sue me and call the police. I can show you if you would like." "Yes. So you were saying that the truck in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it towed?" Me: "Yes, last Tuesday he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no and he got mad at me and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded they remove the vehicle and I told them at that time that I would have the truck towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the truck was in my driveway, so I had it towed." "I just want to confirm, you are saying that it wasn't parked on the street but in your driveway and you have proof of this?" "Yes, sir. If you give me a minute, I will print off the emails that I sent to the HOA that documents the issues, and I will also show you the picture and video as well." With this, the police officer said that he would wait for me to print everything off. Once I got the emails printed, I then returned to the door. I opened my Photos app to the officer to show the truck in my driveway, time-stamped. Handed my phone and printed emails to him. After looking at the photo where you could clearly see my house in the background, the truck blocking the entrance and that it was partially on the lawn, the officer then read the printouts. He handed my phone back to me and asked me to open the video that I had referenced while he went over to the lawn to look. I watched him look at the area and then take a few photos. I could see my neighbour and his whole family standing in their driveway watching me and the NP. NP returned and I handed him back my phone with the video ready and he watched it. After he finished watching the video, we had the following exchange. "I'm going to need a copy of that photo and video for my file. If I provided you with an email, would you be able to send it to me?" "Yes, sir, no problem. I have enough information for my files to determine that the vehicle was not on public property and was in fact on your property. I've made a note that you did not give permission for the vehicle to be parked on your property. Based on the emails you gave me with dates and time, it would appear that you did in fact advise your neighbour not to park on your property. Would you like to file a trespassing report for this incident?" "Oh, absolutely. I can see you are not feeling well. You can either file with me now or you can go online, getting business card out, writing on it and then handing it to me. Here's my business card with my email address that you need to use to send me your photo and video, and the case ID is on the card as well. Do you want to file with me now?" "Honestly, I'm exhausted and would prefer to file online later." "Okay, reference this case when you email your evidence and file the online report. Also reference my name in the report. One more thing. I saw in the video where ND stated he was going to sue you for having the truck towed. He can sue you if he wants, and I would advise that you keep all of the evidence you provided me with today along with the case ID I just gave you. Give it a few days and you can request a copy with the report, and you will want to keep that as well. If you decide to file an online report, you will need to keep a copy of that as well. I'm going to talk to the ND now, and sorry to have bothered you." "Thank you, officer. I'm sorry you had to come out. Have a good day, ma'am. Get some rest." With that, I closed the door and went back to bed. However, I am so mad that I didn't get any sleep. A few hours ago, I sent off my photo, video, and another copy of the HOA emails to the email address the police officer gave me and then saved all of that information just in case. I also filed a trespassing report online. I then sat down and started typing this story. Not sure where this is going to go, but I'm going to see it through. I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback from people saying that I should have just knocked on their door and had them move the truck, but I felt that it was right to have the truck towed. It was. I had already told them twice not to park on my property and it didn't stop, so this was the consequence. I will post an update later if there is anything that happens. Update. So, I know a lot of you have been wanting an update, but I wanted to wait until I got a copy of the police report before I did, which I got this afternoon. Sadly, it didn't go anywhere. I was kind of hoping that he would have a false report charged against him, but the report states that NS told ND that he parked it in the street in front of my house, and that is why ND called the police. The NP had questioned both of them after he spoke to me, and that is when NS said he had lied to his dad and had actually parked in my driveway. I guess they don't believe he did it intentionally, so no charges were filed and the report was closed. I don't believe it, but that's just how it goes. The trespassing report I filed has not been closed yet. I was told that if he is convicted that it is just a misdemeanor and he would have to pay a fine, maybe 10 days of jail and or community service. Also, it would be the son who would be listed as the trespasser, and since he is a minor, I'm not sure where that will go. But I discovered that if he is convicted, then I can use that to have a protective order done. We'll have a follow-up later on the trespassing. Wow, that one was really big. I don't think I've ever read a story that big, but that was a big one. I can't believe they just kept parking the truck. After she kept saying don't park the truck there, they just kept parking the truck there. The amount of entitlement you have to park the truck there anyway. What is up with that, you know? I think that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories in r/EntitledParents. My name is Trey. Let me know what you would like to see next time in the comments below. This was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video.